There was a time when you couldn't even talk about whether or not COVID was, originated from a lab or the Hunter Biden scandal. Do you think that was also big tech censoring and spreading disinformation?
There was no limit on talking about that. People just thought
people were tweeting about it. This was a real New York Post story. It was taken off Twitter. So this is an event that people were not talking about in the news, and when they were trying to use social media to get that information out there for voters who actually probably would not have voted for President Biden had they known that.
That's bull.
Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Kramer for MRC-TV. Donald Trump recently announced that he is filing a class action lawsuit against big tech.
Today, in conjunction with the America First Policy Institute, I'm filing as the lead class representative a major class action lawsuit against the big tech giants, including Facebook, Google, and Twitter.
We wanted to ask people, is big tech too powerful, and is it right that they're censoring conservatives? President Trump is suing social media giants for censoring him and other conservatives. What do you think about that? Do you think big tech is abusing its power?
I think big tech has definitely overused its power, and I think President Trump has every right to do what he needs to do to get his rights back.
Regarding some people, and we'll use Trump for an example, no, I don't, because he abused big tech.
I'm not from here, but I think that when you start to search how people interact in social media to know how they are accepting or denying any candidate, you are invading privacy.
So recently, President Trump is suing big tech because they censored him and also other conservatives. We wanted to ask people, do you think big tech is abusing its power?
No, honestly, I don't know anything about the subject.
Former President Trump, he is suing...
The former occupant.
Yes, so he is suing big tech for censoring him and other conservatives. We were just wondering...
He doesn't understand the Constitution. Private companies are not subject to...
So do you think that conservatives should be censored and pushed off social media platforms?
I think it should be done with a conservative approach.
I feel that big tech is like many businesses. They have the right to censor their patrons.
Doesn't that go against free speech, though?
Free speech involves the government limiting speech.
But this is social media companies. These are private. Do you think that they're too powerful?
Well, you have an argument for that, but it's not a free speech issue.
Have you heard about conservatives being banned from Twitter and Facebook? Okay.
No. Obviously, they hold a lot of power, right? We all get on social media all the time, but I think that there is something to be said about making sure that disinformation is not being spread for the good of the country.
Like the COVID-19 discussion on whether or not it originated in a lab, the Hunter Biden scandal, these were taken off of these platforms.
Well, I do understand that, and yes, they are monopolies, but prior to social media, there were other outlets. Those outlets can still be used. Also, there
was a time when you couldn't share the Hunter Biden story on Twitter or Facebook. You also couldn't talk about whether or not COVID was a lab-created event. Do you think that was big tech also spreading disinformation?
They certainly had a hand in it. Obviously, it was a story, I think, where it could have been talked about, but it was totally you couldn't find it anywhere in the media except for Fox News.
I definitely think that if you're going to get what science is telling you, you're going to listen to the scientists, maybe not Twitter. So maybe Twitter just shouldn't be the base of a lot of people's information.
Well, they're the ones that are allowing what can be out there.
On Twitter, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
She's referencing the not the throttle, but the medium at which it's filtering.
Sure.
Yeah, Jack Dorsey's now deciding what gets allowed on there.
Be said, and if you were creating it one-sided, that would also...
Sure.
That in general is wrong. I don't think anyone on this side of the microphone disagrees with that.
But if search engines like Google or social media platforms where you share this information are super liberal, they don't like conservative-leaning anything, and then they have the right to just take you off, isn't that censoring people's free speech?
Yes and no. I would say more so no, because it is not a platform that is necessarily put out there for everyone.
Well, I don't know if that's happening, but if it's happening, if they are suppressing some stories for people to don't notice what's really happening, they should banish that company.
Corporations are not the same thing as a social media, a Twitter, an Instagram, a TikTok, any of these things. A company,
They're companies, though.
they are companies, but they're not social media posting companies.
I don't think any one single platform should be able to dictate what would be considered something that is, subjective, right?
Yeah.
If there's something that an opinion can be had on it, but you say, well, you're not allowed to have that opinion on this platform, then that also, in order to drive a political agenda, I would consider that incorrect.
There was a time when you couldn't even talk about whether or not COVID was, originated from a lab or the Hunter Biden scandal. Do you think that was also big tech censoring and spreading disinformation?
There was no limit on talking about that. People just thought it was...
People were tweeting about it. This was a real New York Post story. It was taken off Twitter. So this is an event that people were not talking about in the news, and when they were trying to use social media to get that information out there for voters who actually probably would not have voted for President Biden had they known that.
That's bull.